Hi, so this is for my final project for Philosophy 1000. Today I'm going to be talking about misinformation on social media. So misinformation on social media, for those who haven't really seen how this has been playing out over the past few years, is companies like Facebook, like Instagram, those are the same company, Snapchat, all of the Twitter, all of these social media companies are creating a way where they can flag certain posts, calling them misinformation, which tell the viewer, the consumer, that these specific posts are not to be taken as truth. Um, so of course they do these because there's advantages to doing it, such as posts that are clearly false, like people make all these videos of horrible things happening and they want you to believe it's true. Like maybe they make make it look like they're shooting somewhere, or they make it look like there's robberies taking place when it's all fake. So those are very great for that type of reason, to just weed out the truly false things that we really just don't want to put in a public image acting as though they are true. The other thing is going to be like dangerous posts. So you can look at the January 6th riot. This is really one of those truly fundamental moments. Those started happening. And I just want to put in this really quick filler that a lot of what we've learned about is that these political little like jaunts are not to be taken as philosophy, because they're kind of just people trying to impose their own views on you, and the point of philosophy is to come to a common view. Where I don't see these as a political thing. I think that January 6th movement was a truly important moment that showed that there's a lot more people who care about our free speech than we think. Um, which leads us into these disadvantages, which, for those of you who don't know, this misinformation thing that Meta's able to do, that Snapchat's able to do, Twitter, all of these companies that they're able to do, that was a massive part of the January 6th um, capital, whatever you want to call it. We'll just call it January 6th. That was a massive part of that happening because the people who were there wanted to be able to freely speak on social media. You saw Trump's post getting taken down. You saw the post about Hunter Biden's laptop getting taken down. That is a free speech movement. That is a philosophical argument. That is not a political argument, unless you want to say it's a constitutional argument, because in my point of view, the things big tech is doing restrict our free speech, and they create an unconstitutional environment on social media. That's, I'm not supposed to get into sides, but that is one of the disadvantages of doing this, is that it does restrict people's free speech, because people create posts and they expect them to be seen by other people, the same way as if you start shouting in a crowded room, you expect to be heard. And what this kind of does is it's like putting a muzzle on you. So that's one of the very specifics. So you know it's a very hard problem. We see all sorts of people coming up trying to give their own sort of view. Like Elon Musk bought Twitter because he believed the misinformation and the malinformation that he was seeing on there was restrictive of our free speech. And so now he is thinking that he can change it. His view of $8 an hour and you get free speech doesn't quite make sense to me, because part of the name is free, and if it's $8 a month, then it's not free. You shouldn't have to pay to speak out. The same way you should not have to pay to yell in a crowded area. That makes sense to me. But we're seeing a lot of people trying to fight this in certain ways. You see Mark Zuckerberg on Joe Rogan's podcast talking about how that misinformation works and why it's necessary. They were talking about how they approached the Hunter Biden laptop situation, and how they didn't remove it. They just made it so that it didn't show up on the Explore page, which is where you find new posts that aren't from people you're following. So there's a lot of people looking into this misinformation issue right now. I think it's one of the biggest philosophical questions we have in our date, is we've had this discussion. We've had this discussion for the past 300-400 years about how can we save free speech? How can we keep our free speech? And in today's era, that big question is, does that free speech extend to social media? And if so, how does that work? Because this misinformation might sound like a good idea, but if what else sounded to a good idea, what to a king 500 years ago, like, some kings would lock anybody up who someone thought was guilty, and that was their thought, like, we're never going to have crime again, because if you even think of doing a crime, you're going to go to jail. But that's not how it should be. So all in all, misinformation is a very big philosophical issue right now, to do with free speech and a person's right to speak freely on the internet, which is something that has not been answered since the founding of the internet. And this is a new question that we could not have answered 50 years ago, because it was not an issue. And so this is one of those new issues that we now are seeing play out, and philosophy has its, it comes back as its new purpose. We have a new question that we need answered, and that is misinformation restrictive of our right to free speech on social media? Thanks.